and welcome to this edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of Ruane Attorneys, a criminal defense and civil rights firm in Connecticut, as well as the curator of the Criminal Mastermind, a mastermind group for criminal defense lawyers. With me, as always, Seth Joseph Price over there. Seth is the grand poobah of all things Price Benowitz, DC, Maryland, Virginia, and South Carolina, but not the Delmarva Peninsula. Well, go there, but you're not located there. And then Blue Shark Digital, SEO for law firms. And Seth, I want to talk to you this week. It's a great day for us. It's a great day because it's Yankees opening day. Baseball is back. I've been going through withdrawal. You know, football takes up some of my time, but I'm very happy to see the Yankees back. We got Anthony Volpe starting at shortstop.
Well, and I was going to say, I get cynical, the millionaires, the injuries, this and that, and then they bring me back in. You know, yeah. same age as Jeter when he started. Great story. Can't wait to see him.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be great. So let's talk about collections this week because we started talking about it last week, and there's a lot to unpack here. I threw up a question in the group, the Facebook group, the Law Firm Blueprint Facebook group, and got a lot of good responses there. So let's talk about it. I mean, big firms call it realization rates, what they bill out to their corporate clients. They don't necessarily get it all back, right? Corporate clients will go in, they'll cut bills, that type of thing. But for us, in the B2C world, it's a collection rate. I was going through my own collection rate. 2022, we had a 97.8% collection rate, which was awesome, I think, especially in a criminal defense practice. But that 2.2% adds up to over $100,000.
Yeah, I'll challenge you the other way. Which is, look, there are two different extremes, right? Like, particularly if people in family law, those family law lawyers, it's not what you bill, it's what you collect. I see this in the white collar federal criminal defense case, heavy duty criminal defense, not the DUIs, but the heavy duty criminal stuff where you get stuck in trials. That's where, it's not even collections. If there's no money coming in and you're stuck in a trial, right? So let's divide the question into what I'll call the regular widget. And one of the things my own firm has sort of not struggled with, but it's been brought to my attention is we have guys with double-digit collections rates, unpaid, versus people with less than yours, right? So it goes the gamut. But this is the piece that I'm going to challenge on, which is one of the guys we have that has a significant collection rate might do 1.3 himself gross, and he may collect 1.1 and change. That's a huge delta. But that's a lot of
10%.
Right. But that's top line revenue of 1.1, right? Versus I have a lawyer who's amazing and does 6 and change, maybe 7, and has almost nothing. Which would you rather? And so it's an interesting question.
Because, I think it comes down to how you compensate your team. If that's a salaried worker,
so let's say it's a percentage, but it's a percentage based on collections, right? Now there are extra expenses, right? That person has more intake. There's more things going on. It is more wear and tear on a firm, and I love it when somebody has it. But I'll take the analogy since we put all our plaintiffs' lawyers to sleep with this opening question. It's not dissimilar to the question of a plaintiff's firm, something I have pushed for and not necessarily gotten my team to adopt, which is when I literally texted John Morgan late one night, what percentage of cases should I be dropping after signing? And his number is 30%. And I've heard that from other consultants like Bill Biggs.
Wow.
Yes, 30%. That is for a marketed firm where stuff is coming in. Now, you have to be set up for it. You don't drop those cases, you're going to be stuck in cases, you have statute, all sorts. But assuming that you're willing to drop the cases and you know how to do it, you're going to sort of hopefully not take too much of a brunt on bad reviews. They looked at it. But if you get cases, a certain percentage of those, and this is where it comes down to, is that I struggle because again, I'm pivoting into PI. We'll come back to collections. When you have somebody on a PI case and the person who's doing intake has to either say yes or no, and you're going to get upset if the case gets dropped later, there's a problem, because they're going to be more reticent, and there's stuff on the delta. So are you able to measure what are you not getting because you say immediately, let me go speak to somebody, put you on hold, that person leaves, goes somewhere else. How many cases are you not getting? Yes, you get the ones you know are 5-star cases, but how many cases out there have some hair on them that can make you money, that the person is hemming and hawing, looking for supervision, looking for this, where they just said yes and dealt with it later, they'd figure it out. So that's the first thing. Let's go back to here. When doing payment plans, you don't want to be stupid. If somebody is there for check fraud, don't take a check. Right? Like, there's some truisms that you've picked up over your years, but if you're able to get a payment plan strategically that pushes a little bit longer than it should, but they have a job, they have a credit card, and you're going to sign for more money. If you sign for 20 or 30% more because of a payment plan, is that worth it? Because I'm seeing it. If I charge less and get all money up front, I have a very low collections rate, or even with a modest collect. But the moment you get to more expensive payment plans, there could be something as much as 10%.
Right.
We pay on rewards cards up to 3% for a credit card, right? So the question is that delta there of potentially 7%, is it worth pushing and being more aggressive? And I'm throwing it out there. That's not to say that if you're a family law lawyer that you're billing 100 and you're paying paralegals and you're doing all this stuff and you're collecting 50, that's a real problem. But is there something to, and again, this is asking, not saying, is there something to, because I have lawyers who do it all these different ways, is there something to being slightly more aggressive, just like on PI cases where you should be rejecting a certain number after signing? Is your collection rate too low in that you should be pushing further?
Well, that's one of the things that I was going to say. If I collect 100% of a $5,000 fee, right? But looking back, I probably should have charged $10,000. Did I get 100% or did I get 50% of what I should have gotten?
Or should have, if you said to somebody rather than 5,000 up front, hey, 2,500, give me, $1,200 a month, knowing full well that it's going to break around 7,500, 8,000. Are you better off than 5,000?
I think it kind of goes back to your model. I mean, if a lot of people out there are not good at tracking billing, getting their bills out monthly, they may not have the staff that they need to get it done. A lot of lawyers also don't like to talk about money. And I think that goes back to the lack of business training in law school. I've never met a dentist who doesn't like to talk about money. And this filling is going to cost you X. If you ask them straight up,
I was once in the chair upside down, and they're trying to sell me this is not the dentist, but the assistant, a $35 like fluoride. I had no idea what it was. Why are you trying to sell me something upside down in a chair? I was like, I don't care what it is. That technique. The nonsense. So anyway,
right. But I mean, it's I think you have to, before you start judging yourself by other people, and that's something that I think a lot of people fall prey to. I think it's natural to look at what other people are putting out in the world and think, oh my God, I'm not keeping up, and that type of thing. I'll be honest, we have a friend of the show, Marco Brown, who gives a lecture about getting paid every dollar that you're owed, and that's your duty to your family and to your firm, because then you can help other people. And I was sort of reticent to go and look at what my collections percentage was for last year until I finally said, I got to just bite the bullet and do it. I was happy with the number. And we've instituted, and in the group, I posted my collections tracking form. I'm happy to say that of that 2.2%, we've collected back 40% of that money. Because
which to me means it's nothing like that. Now the question look, I've struggled with this a lot of different ways, but it really depends on how you set pricing up.
Yeah, I mean that has a lot to do with it, but it also goes back to do you have staff that can update credit cards and follow up with somebody if a credit card expires halfway through their automatic?
Right. So there's like mental errors that might be in baseball thing. Right. Where the person doesn't just make those calls, but the question is, depending on the area of law, right? There's a combination of being the proactive lawyer and making sure you stay up on it versus people that don't have money at all because it's going to break at some point.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, it's interesting. I posted this question in the group 2 days ago, and we got a lot of good responses.
Let's hear them.
So one of the responses was, how do you stay on top of it? Someone like Jane Ware, who's a business lawyer, right? She deals with other business people. She wants an evergreen retainer enough to cover a month of work in hand. And I think when you're dealing with small businesses, that could be a big big nut for them to bite off. But you could build that up over time with credit cards. I mean, I got to tell you, from on a criminal perspective, what we have done is we've set up payment plans for clients who want to hire us for a trial, but knowing they're a year away from the trial. And we've said, here's a payment plan. We're not entering appearance until everything is paid up. The money's going to go right into our trust account. You could always get it back, but we'll set that up and set payment plans. So you don't necessarily have to file an appearance right away if you have an agreement with the client. And another thing that we instituted a while back that has really helped us is that we actually have 2 different credit card processors in our office. We have our daily operating credit card processor, and then we use LawPay for any deposits that go right into trust that we have to hold for people. And that's really helped us sort of divide what goes into our operating account, which is permissible under the rules of ethics for some of our flat fee clients, and what we need to hold on to for either trial fees and that type of thing.
Let me ask you a question. Why LawPay, which is, again, I know there's a lot of user-friendly pieces to it, so maybe efficiencies, but it's expensive.
It's expensive. It absolutely is. But since it's the credit card that's going into my trust account, the way LawPay does it is they give you the entire deposit, and then they will deduct the fees from another different account. So it makes my bookkeeping very clean. Client gives us a $25,000 down payment that's got to go into our trust account. $25,000 shows up in the deposit via LawPay, and it just makes my books clean.
No, understood.
And if I get audited, I can tell the bar.
Believe me, I'm in the midst of all sorts of nonsense with this stuff. But that said, and look, that may be enough, but that's 20 basis points.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's real money.
That's real money. I mean, it's funny. I was talking to my local bank, and I know I could get more aggressive with the credit card processing for my operating account. I was talking to my local banker because my local bank was bought out by M&T as a regional bank. Yeah. And they're trying to establish a relationship with me. And they were like, wow, you do process a ton of credit cards with us. And I was like, yeah, and I'm upset that I'm getting hit with all these ticky-tack fees over the last 5 months since the merger, which were all waived at the other bank. When are we going to talk about that? And so it's been escalated on Friday. The regional director's coming into my office I'm sure to make nice. But, these are the types of things. Another one, Taylor Darcy said, he's a firm believer in getting paid up front. And I think that's all well and good if the nature, and I believe Taylor also does business formation stuff. When you're dealing with people who need to do business work, it's a lot different from the father who just got served with divorce papers, or the guy who just got arrested for DUI. The mindset of, hey, I'm building a business, I'm going to need a lawyer, is one thing. People are used to writing those checks, whereas nobody really does.
Right. So I don't disagree. Though each of those people, I think, is doing both Jane and Taylor are doing this right for that specific practice, given the size of the practice. For me, we're doing 8 figures in criminal alone, right? So the idea is, if I said take it or leave it at this number, I would have some fraction of my total, right? And so the idea is, if we're able to say, okay, I could make this up. Let's say it's 10 million in criminal, hypothetically. I could do 5 million to people that would pay up front. But if I give people a payment plan, I do 7,500. And if I did crazy payment plans, I would say crazy, aggressive payment plans, I might do, 12, of which that 12 becomes 10. And it's like, again, it's part of, if you're doing it consciously. And what I always say is, if it's done strategically, fine. Because look, as you said, you may be undercharging by 50% if a payment plan allows you to charge differently, so that Marco has no collections. And let's say hypothetically he raised his rate. He had 2 numbers. One number was for cash up front, and the other was almost a bank, right? And again, you did that with two attorneys. You're going to do A/B test, and you say, okay, for these guys, I'm going to charge instead of $400 an hour, $550 an hour, but you don't need to pay up front. You can give me money, and we're going to bank it, knowing there's going to be breakage. Knowing how good he is, would he be able to keep that to a nominal percentage? The key with most jurisdictions is knowing your jurisdiction and knowing what draconian forces the judges have to keep you in cases. The idea that
for me, I can't get out of a criminal case.
No, exactly. And it's some places where we practice, it's crazy. You could be forced into a multi-week trial without money.
Oh, I've done it. I have been paid for fewer trials that I've done. How do I say this? I have been stiffed.
You would stiff more, right? And that's, look, I had to come to Jesus with my law partner Dave. He was doing heavy duty federal, and this is where I think the collection matter really matters, and it's to the Marco hourly rate piece, which is you can he charges a fair number and he gets it. God bless, right? When you start getting into higher numbers, there becomes, especially higher, larger cases where you need to get in to do the case, but the money isn't there. So I took Taylor's idea, money up front, great, but we'd have a lot less clients, right? So now it's this balance. And what you just said is so true. Let's say hypothetically it's the same number. I'm making this up, that you got paid for whatever. You say there's a large percentage, more percentage you didn't get paid 100 cents on the dollar. Some you got 100, some you got 80, 60. So let's say at the end of the day, and this is what I think people need to look at, this is what I'm looking at for myself, is, okay, take the criminal case that's hourly. Again, we're not doing the DUIs that you give your 2% margin on, but if you went back, and you don't do this right now, presumably in volume, larger cases, we have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 cases. That sounds great. But if you have a $500,000 case, right, but they only pay $300,000 in that case, all of a sudden, pro rata, your billables change. So let's use numbers that are easier for me to do, right? Which theoretically means if you were charging, and I hope this is right, and somebody will tell us if I'm wrong, $500 an hour, and you billed $500,000, but you only got $300,000, that's 40% less. So essentially, you're now billing at $300 an hour. That's what that means. And if your associate who's on this bill was billing at hypothetically $400 an hour, that means, or they would be at
260.
240. Right, 240. Right. So you have 240 and you have 300. That's not very exciting for a scaled practice. It may be fine if you're a solo, but if you're trying to scale a practice where you have separate,
and the thing is, you probably have to do $500,000 worth of work on.
No.
You're doing that work. So then all of a sudden, you're not making, because you've got your attendant costs, right, you've got your staffing, and
right. But knowing that that's the case, right? This isn't like, hey, this is special to us. All of our mentors have the same issue. You go around the country and speak to people, high profile cases. We spoke to people, they never get 100 cents on the dollar. What that means is your hourly rate is a fiction. And that's the problem. So then it's not a collections issue to me. It's, are you good in business at that rate or that blended rate over time? So if you get X number of cases at 500, X at 4, and X at 3, and your total is at 4, and you say, I am good at $400 an hour, fine, if that works. But if you sit there thinking, I've done my pro formas at 500, and that's what I'm supposed to be getting, and I'm not. So what I'm saying is I'm taking the collections issue a step further into these larger cases that are feast or famine. Are we, in fact, basically, and that's the issue, at $240, $300 an hour, you might as well just open a solo shop. You're not getting the advantages of a scaled law firm, which mean that if you don't somehow get to the numbers that you're billing at, you need to add a premium to it. Otherwise, when it comes down, you're getting into a danger zone that you can't live at.
I wonder if the clients that are, and this is so obscure, it probably only impacts, 1 to 3 people in our audience, but I wonder if there is a model for billing, kind of like how the IRS taxes you. You got to pay 100% of the first 300,000, and then our billable rate goes down from 3 to 5, and then it goes down a little more from 5 to $1 million. Business people might like that as a way, because at that point you're committed to the case, you're in it a little further, and they're paying less per hour as you are deeper and deeper in the file, because ostensibly there's less that you need to do getting into it. And then if there's a trial, you got to figure that out. But
that figure, and I think that's the fiction. That right there. So look, it's an interesting idea. I take the cynical view, having spoken to a lot of criminal lawyers, the clients have X amount of money. It doesn't matter what you bill at. So the question is, that's why I keep talking about the hourly rate, not the collections breakage, which is you're going to get an hourly rate. The more they pay, the higher that gets to your actual higher rate. But that's the frustration. And that this is what nobody talks about, which is and that part of the issue with my law partner's model right now is he is known as the trial lawyer who is there for trials, not just pleading stuff out. People come to him because they can't afford big law for a case that actually goes to trial because there's so many hours involved. The problem is the trials themselves are the loss leader, and you make your money on everything else. If your ratio, this is what I'm bringing back to you, Jay. If the ratio of trials, again, this doesn't apply to family law because in theory those hours are all being paid, but understanding there's a known breakage in criminal, this is probably more appropriate for your criminal mastermind than it is for here, but if there's a known breakage in criminal, are you in fact, is the ratio of cases that go to trial one that's going to determine your profitability, knowing that nobody can really afford a full trial in a criminal case?
Yeah, I mean, at least for us in my market, it is exceptionally rare that somebody can afford what is actually necessary to pay for like a murder defense.
Right, and that's my point. So your number is some exponential depending on how crazy the time is and how disciplined you are. The other problem is great lawyers in a murder case, you could spend every waking minute for the next 6 months on it. And if you don't have anything else, your family get pushed aside. So the effective billable rate comes down to almost criminal justice act rates.
I actually think it comes down lower than that. I mean,
it can.
Because I mean, we're talking about, the amount of hours. It's funny. I was just thinking right now we've got a backlog in one of my local courts of about 80 murders, and they're desperate for lawyers who can step in and handle a murder case. And it's probably been 18, 19 years since I had a murder. And, there's some muscles that I'm like, I got the muscle memory. I should get back in, kick in some doors and handle a murder. But then I'm looking at it saying, I know what it takes to try a murder case. I was, in my early 30s back then, and I had the energy. I don't know if I have the energy now to do it justice and to lose money. So I don't know where I'm going. Another thing that came up in the group that I thought, two things that people posted about that I think were awesome that our audience should listen to. We had Karen Tenenbaum, who says on her invoices she always has a QR code that takes people right to their payment.
I like that.
I love that. I thought that was genius. So we're actually adding it right now. And
I assume the corollary to that is the link. No. And I say that jokingly because I don't know how many people send me now things with QR codes on it to my cell phone. I'm just like, dude, what are you doing?
Well, that's if you're mailing a paper bill out.
No. Understood. I agreed. But even if it's a print, even if it's on a E1 that may get printed out and sent to somebody. Like there are a number of people that are not tech savvy that print every bill out and send it for collections.
So what we're going to do, I think starting April 1st is for all of the people who are behind, we're going to actually send them a link to a payment portal and say, pay $100 towards your past due balance and see how many people click on that link and just go for it, where it's just $100.
Well, and that's the question about the whole collections process, which is.
I got one other thing I want to get in before we get too far, because I don't want to have the whole show on this. Chris Ragavy out in St. Louis, who I met a while ago, he did debt collection work in his prior life before he became a criminal defense lawyer, and he said something that I loved, and he said, set your payment date to be either the day of or the day after their paycheck. And that, I thought it was brilliant because, you get people whose bills, will eat up all of their paycheck. But if you're one of the first ones to hit that payment on that day, you're going to get paid and somebody else will get stiffed. So if you have people that are getting behind or want an extended payment plan, tie it to their paycheck date and not necessarily your day that you want to get.
No. I love
the
that.
first.
No. I love that. And B, it made me think of something, which is, and we used to do this a lot more with like people behind on rent, is know when tax refunds are going for bigger cases.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
And Shamika talked about having evergreen retainers and credit cards. For us with credit cards, we actually do ACH and credit cards.
Yes.
We always want to have a backup credit card, but what we found was we have to confirm with the client that the credit card they're giving us is not the debit card associated with that bank account, because otherwise you're really only getting one. And that's something that I think a lot of people need to pay attention to. But I mean, the QR code, the link to a payment portal, yeah, I think is huge. And I'll be able to report back to
well, I mean, it only makes sense if you're mailing this stuff, but yeah,
right.
You know, or again, yes, love it. Let's get one more topic in before we get out of here.
Topic is, and this is something that I don't know, this could probably go long too. Benefits. You know, as it becomes more difficult to attract and retain talent, benefits is something that state government, federal government, and big corporations can dangle that we, you know, as small employers, sometimes have a trouble being able to do. Now, I've been rather aggressive with the benefits in the past, trying to make sure that I give as much as possible. What's your thoughts on what benefits are must gives and what benefits are nice to gives, and what benefits are crazy to even give it?
Well, look, everything else. We have people listening to this with a whole spectrum of where they are in the thing. When I first started, my deal with this before Obamacare, but I was basically, hey, look, we don't have a firm insurance plan. Go out, get your insurance. I'll pay it. It was very cheap, and that was pre-Obamacare. You could get your own insurance for a fraction, assuming that you didn't have some massive pre-existing condition. So now that that's in, everybody has a reasonable insurance, not the cheap one. So I just got a call from a friend of mine, a Blue Shark client, who was a modest firm, and it just lost one and then a second key employee, like one employee and one candidate who was applying because he didn't have health insurance, right? So I think the basic fundamentals, people are, especially as we hit a recession, they want to make sure that they are covered. That's there. The part that I feel gets sticky, right? So health insurance a must. We have gone, and actually one of the reasons we didn't go with the PEO, which I would love for a bunch of reasons, is that it gives us 50 different plans rather than 3.
Right.
And so I have people all over the country now doing different things. If we were locked into those, that became something where I couldn't hire certain people because I couldn't give them the insurance that they needed, right? So on that end, it's there. The piece that I think is much more sensitive is the 401k. And if you haven't seen it, there's a great episode of John Oliver discussing it. We'll try to find and get a link down there. Okay. And it's so incredibly, it's 401k. You need it. And look, we want people to save. We want people the fees that are associated, even on the low fee plans, are so insane that when you look at when you actually see benefit to your plan, it is crazy. And there are good ones out there. I know Tony Robbins pitches one. There are other ones out there. And we do it. We have one. But it is so frustrating because it's sort of like, who is making money? The banking institutions.
Sure.
And it's like, yes, you want a place for your people to save, but it's so crazy. I wish that we were in a position that there was you could just basically fund people's Roths or something like that in an automated way that they said, hey, I'm really saving. But the idea that we're sitting there and in order to give people what they want, going through essentially the banking industry, which Lord knows how to make money on fees. You talked about credit card fees before, like it is, and every time you look away, it's worse. But if you go through this, John, he actually sat there and wanted to do right by employees. And when he saw what was there, it's just so horrific when you dig into it that you do it because you're not going to hire people without it. At the same time, you want to check the box. At the same time, I get it. And as long as I was small enough, I would try to do for anybody who really cared about it, say, hey, look, I'll put the money in your I'll literally set aside money and you can put it directly into your thing. And they can only go so far. You can't do that as you scale, but it is, what are your thoughts? What are some of the things that you think?
So, I have been rather aggressive with our benefits. We've been doing a 401k, healthcare for 18, 19 years at this point to our employees. Our employees came back to us. They're like, we want vision insurance. We want dental insurance. We've added those things.
Exactly. And over time, we've added the dental.
Long-term, short-term disability, long-term care. I mean, we literally have every conceivable.
And look, I'll tell you,
have a once you get insurance plan.
I'm sorry. And once you get the disability, it comes in handy. I used to self-insure it. We just pay people. My attitude was we would just cover anybody whenever they had an issue. And they did. Sometimes they paid 6 months. Sometimes they paid 2 months of money out of pocket. But you know what? As you grow up, it's the cost of doing business. You put it in there. I mean, the problem in some of the urban markets in DC, for example, we now have an extra payroll tax that covers maternity leave. Now it's awesome. It's just each of these things, these awesomeness comes with another, fraction of a percent. Those percents, I feel like it's, was it Superman 4 with the Richard Pryor with those half pennies? It's like it adds up. And so the part of it is I'm as you get larger, you sort of like, okay, it's more holistic. It's the cost of doing business. We suck it up. But I think it's also part of the reason that we've both diversified to have some percentage of international labor, because the domestic labor, it's not just the cost, but it's everything else on top of it. And you want to make sure you do right. You can't, obviously not going to have an international lawyer in court, but what can I do to make sure that my fees don't have to go up and I still have a reasonable profit margin?
Yeah, I mean, these are the types of things. I don't think it's possible in today's world to be able to get a top level attorney working for you where you don't offer medical benefits, 401k.
Agreed.
Like, I mean, I know some people that are fighting it and saying, we just don't offer healthcare, and that's.
Oh no, hold on, time out. Let's put it this way: if you don't, and I've been there because I started out that way, that means one by one you need to negotiate and make sure that they're equal to not having it. You can't just say no, then you're going to lose the person, right? So that's not even an option. So the question is, could you say, hey, go now? First, there's certain rules. After you get to certain size, you have to, right? And then and secondly, there is again, we've talked about the mother-in-law factor. I'll call it. Sometimes the wife factor. So I love when there is a brand that is not a person. I feel like that is something that helps hire greater talent. We moved from the loss of David Benowitz when I started, that was what I named it, to Price Benowitz as something that people could come and tell somebody, it doesn't make you the number two, it just means you're part of something bigger. I think similarly, if you go to your wife and say, hey, they're going to pay me the cash equivalent, we're going to be better off. It's tough. People want to check a box. There's too much dodginess in this world. And even stuff, a friend of mine who had a 401k, I remember he was with a really dubious, one of the stalwarts of the bar in DC. This guy worked for him for 15 years. It turned out the guy didn't fund the 401k for several years.
Oh, that's
No, understood. My point is, the stuff that happens blows your mind. So if I'm an employee statistically over time, you're better off just having the health insurance than counting on somebody to, again. So it works unless it doesn't work. If you're so charismatic that you can convince people it doesn't matter, God bless. But over time, when you don't want to have a sit down convincing of each person, and all it takes is one wife to say, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. Just take the other job. That's all it takes once, and it's not worth it.
Absolutely. So, okay, before we go, I want to talk about a third topic today. And I'm just going to put this as a bug in your ear so we can think about it a little bit more. But I dreamt this up last night, like, I don't know, 11:30 at night. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, one of the biggest challenges we have with both our remote employees and our US-based employees is training them. And that's because normally, and especially in today's market, we're hiring when we're at maximum capacity. And so we are trying to onboard somebody to fulfill an immediate need. And then we have to take somebody almost off of their work to train.
This is longer than a third set. Let's make this our kickoff, because I have lots of thoughts, but I've never, before this, there is so much to this. Everybody deals with it, right?
So here's my thought, and I want to talk about it now, end of March, right? Because by the time the All-Star break, I'm bringing back baseball, by the time the All-Star break comes, I think we're going to be well on the way. And here's what I'm doing. I'm hiring a teacher who's fluent in Google Classroom to take all of our existing videos in our and create essentially onboarding coursework, because I don't have the knowledge to do that. I have the ability to have my team or myself create these videos, but there's a large swath of professionals who have been taught how to use things like Google Classroom to communicate and instruct. And I'm going to put that to work for me during the summer break. I'll have
look, I'm going to do my part in the interruption flag. Great. It's a Jay Ruane idea. I love it. It could be the next $1 billion idea. We got to wait 4 months before we roll it out, because
but I just wanted, because I know there are people listening.
I know, but I don't want people look, training videos, awesome. Is the teacher, you're gonna end up with somebody who doesn't know legal figuring it out? Maybe if they know the technology, or and the other problem I found, again, that's why I think this is a much longer conversation, which is how much do you put in? Obviously, you want manuals for everybody. The question is, how much extra effort do you put in, knowing that a lot of stuff changes over time? So now you're creating videos, they sit in a vault, somebody starts, I can't use that anymore, it's outdated. Is it too dangerous to use versus evergreen that is there? So to me, before I even get there, the question is, what can I do evergreen that's firm specific, general area specific, before I get into the weeds that some teacher's going to go around? Because then you're not taking time away when you're in the fire drill of the person leaving, but you're pulling people away to explain to somebody who's not there. So again, every idea, sure, let's try it, but it's like it is easier said than done. I'm curious to see how it goes.
So we already have like 100 videos that we use in our onboarding and training. We have YouTube playlists for lawyers and for reception staff and everything. What my thought is to have the person who's familiar with these online LMSs, learning management systems, whatever you want to call them, have them put the thing together, create the quizzes, make sure that they get graded automatically, so that we have that stuff there. I'm going to take.
Do you use Training at all?
No, because we have Ruane.co, which is the online knowledge base by Lightswitch.
Of course you do. But look, it's the same concept. If you want to go and get those,
Training stole my idea. But yeah, I mean, but we're going to create a subdomain on it, and we're going to have a whole training thing, and it's going to allow people who are in reception to take the coursework for intake or operations and get better at certain things. And I think that this is the next evolution in how we're doing it, because we're going to claw back significant hours from highly compensated staffers, so that they don't necessarily have to train on some of the more mundane, basic things, and they can focus their one-on-one training on the really higher level things as we onboard.
Right, and I think that's what people will find as they do it. You're not the average. It's not your first day at the rodeo. For the average person starting, knowing, I'll give you the spoiler, for most people, for us mortals that are not Mr. Systems, that part of the issue is the amount of time and effort it takes to get meaningful training. Like this person could spend the whole summer, and you find out that it saves an hour to 2 hours in that before they get to the one-on-one training. The question is, how far can you do it? How far can that training get you? And that's always been my frustration. Not that we don't aspire to be more. It is much easier said than done to get stuff that gets you, because that's really what you're talking about, is how much one-on-one training can you curtail through interactive video?
Right. So what we have in the blueprint, you got to do a search for it, but there's a thing called the training tracker. It's something that we got from Joey Vitale. And that's how he onboards his employees. And it gives you, you have your 90 days for introduction, proficiency, and mastery. And we have the videos that somebody has to be able to watch and be able to answer the questions, that type of thing. This is just taking it, putting it onto a platform, making it look more professional. And I think some of that helps as well in getting people on board. I mean, we're an office of 30 people, and probably in the next 5 years, we'll be an office of 50 people. And so if I'm going to be that
I thought you were going to be on the beach. What's going on? You changing your mind?
We're going to be in office. I'm going to be, at the point of the spear, but I'm not going to be here when there's 50 people. I have to give up my office because I don't want to take on more space. And that's another thing I want to talk about that's coming up is, these 5-year leases that people signed in 2018, 19, and early 2020 are starting to come due.
My law firm, right now we're busting at the seams because we gave back some space during COVID, And it is, and this is the frustration of going to soapbox for a second. The market is softer and you can get great concessions, but it doesn't reflect how ridiculously soft it is. It's so propped up. And so you're paying real money when
and that's what I want to talk about, because I was reading an article about some of these mid-regional banks and how their books are basically propped up by these loans to commercial landlords, that landlords have these huge notes that they were making, and they got bailed out, and they had tenants before. I mean, here's a perfect example. Subway has a huge corporate campus by me here in Connecticut. They are getting rid of their entire corporate campus and moving into a building on my corporate, in my office park here. And they're taking up 3 floors in one building, and that's it. And my landlord's ecstatic because he now has an anchor tenant in one of his buildings after losing Unilever. But I'm thinking, look at all that real estate that Subway's going to have that's going to be empty. And I don't know if they own it or if
they're commercial. I got a college buddy, a fraternity brother. He and his brother went to Houston during the last real estate bust, and they bought up millions of square feet of commercial real estate, reclassified it. So they took a campus like that and turned it into, like suites that a Jay Ruane could get. And it is, again, this is a cycle ago, but they, cover of Forbes and stuff like that. These guys just crushed it. So like with every downside, there's opportunity. Somebody's going to figure out what to do with that real estate.
And that's my point. My lease I signed a lease during COVID to help out my landlord because I appreciate the relationship that we have. And he said, hey, look, I need a certain number of leases re-signed to help with my bank financing. Will you re-sign? My lease is now up in 2 more years. And I'm thinking 2 more years, that market may be softer. It may be time for me to buy something and exit here. Although I don't want to be a landlord in that respect. So these are all things that we got to talk about, but that's going to do it for today, folks. We've babbled on long enough for you. I got some baseball to watch. I'm sure Seth does as well. So that's going to do it this week here on the Law Firm Blueprint. Of course, you can follow us along anywhere you go by taking us with the Law Firm Blueprint podcast, available wherever you get podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Audible, you name it, we're there. So please find us. Just search up the Law Firm Blueprint podcast and give us a 5-star review. And of course, you can catch us always here on Facebook, 3 p.m. on Thursdays Eastern, 12 p.m. on Thursdays Pacific. And you can find us every week making comments and asking questions in our Facebook group, the Law Firm Blueprint. Any parting words, Seth?
No, have a great week. And, we'll see you next week.
Have a great week, folks. Go Yankees, and be on the lookout. Come July, you might be seeing my whole new LMS in place here on the Law Firm Blueprint. Bye for now.